Holy blank. That's your message. All right, peace. Oh my God. Cancer. What the hell's going on? Picking up all sorts of energies. The street level spirituality. Thanks for coming to hang out with me. This is Hanging with Cancer. End of a decade. End of the year. Basically cycles for the next few months as we end this decade. Wow. Lots of death. Lots of stuff freaking you the fuck out over the last so many years. Yeah. There's so much energy going on here between the astrology and the intuition, and we're going to pull some tarot into this. This format's longer format. This is hanging out with me, and hopefully feeling like we can have some sort of dialogue or conversation. Something you can put on in the background, chill out. I have a Pisces full moon. Overly empathetic. I should just be locked in a room with like cats. I can't deal with fucking anything. I can't deal with being out around people. I just soak up everything. I have a Cancer ascendant, so I'm very familiar with where the planets are and what the energy is around Cancers. Now, the last so many years for you guys have been really intense because you have this really, really major Plutonic energy opposing your sign. If you're a Cancer, Pluto rose opposite your sign a number of years ago, and it's been just going into Capricorn, reversing, going in deeper into Capricorn, reversing. And so this is a theme around relationships for people with Cancer ascendants. That's not going to relate to other people in a lot of ways, but in regards to your sun sign, it's opposite your true nature. So opposite your true identity, you've had this major Plutonic energy. Now Pluto, the planet Pluto, God, there's so much to talk about here. The planet Pluto, let's just get into it. This might be a long video, we'll see. The planet Pluto, I just had my morning coffee. I'm ready to sleep. The planet Pluto, the symbology for the planet Pluto is simple. It's transformative. And what it does is it breaks things apart and then reassembles them. Another analogy would be like it comes up to you, grabs you from behind, slits your throat. It drags you into the river where you're renewed by life's true waters. And then it drags you out dead into a field of flowers, and then you bloom again. So it's great because Pluto always delivers us into a far more beautiful place. The difficulty with Pluto is that it moves so slow that that process can take a long time. And it can also represent numerous deaths, literally and symbolically. Mostly symbolically, but we can see it around us. So it's a motherfucker. It's a real motherfucker. And going through these processes, if you don't understand what's happening, can feel frightening. It can feel really frightening. Until that renewal comes, until we are fully through the cycle of the process, we can lose our identity if it's aspecting us in a way that's so close to our identity. Now, sometimes it's depending, like say it's in the eighth house, you have, you could be dealing with major legal issues and power structure and stuff like that that's kind of outside yourself, but affects you personally. But when it's kind of right there opposing your sense of identity, then it can get really intense in your inner world and your relationships with other people. So for Cancer, this has been happening for a number of years now. I have some connections with people, and I know a lot of people with either Cancer ascendants or Cancers themselves, and it's been major, major. I mean, people, family members dying, friends dying, our sense of purpose dying, our identity dying, this feeling of losing really, really major aspects of what we identify with as people. So, the good news is that you may have spent the last 6 years or so freaked the fuck out, just one thing after another. Like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? The good news is that, from what I can tell, is the majority of that initial fracturing has already occurred. So that's really good. Whenever I do a tarot reading, I always pull a card to just kind of hone in. A circle has 360 degrees. Let's hone in on 30 degrees and kind of see what the tone is here before I even do the reading. And what I got was the reverse Four of Swords. And to me, the Four of Swords is really I don't know, I kind of see it as the true death card in a way. We have the death card, and that represents, something leaving and all that stuff. But the Four of Swords, to me, it's like, it's a guy laying on his back. It's kind of like the initiate in the sarcophagus of the Great Pyramid or something. It's I'll tell you this story. So basically the idea is that there was a brotherhood of initiates, in Egypt, and that the sarcophagus and the pyramid was kind of the final initiation, where they wouldn't tell you where you were going, and you would lay down in the sarcophagus. They would put the lid on, and you knew nothing. Now, ultimately, they only left you in there for 3 days. But during that period, you had no idea. You didn't know what was happening. You didn't know if you were left for dead, blah, 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 blah. Now, if you had mastered everything that you were taught before then, you would have the ability to surrender the senses of the physical body and not let the monkey part of who we are and our biological influences overtake us through that process. So then they would take the lid of the sarcophagus off 3 days later. You're not dead, you're fine. But there's a process of initiation of identifying more with the spiritual realms than being controlled by the physical sense of the body, of the fears. And that would have some sort of profound effect on how you conduct yourself in your life. So with this being reversed out like this, it feels like to me that you've been in the sarcophagus, you've had the transformative experiences, and now it's time to move forward. Well, how do we move forward when we've lost our sense of identity? How do we move forward when, I used to identify my life with having certain people in my life who may or may not be there anymore, or things I used to identify with within myself that aren't there anymore. Maybe a previous career, previous cycles, and you move into a more mature and space in your life where there's a lot of blanks to be filled. Now, in January, we have there's a lot going on here. So we also have Saturn coming up opposite Cancer. Saturn's authority, it's the stern father, it's doing things right, it's being on a schedule, it's a regiment. Now that's opposing Cancer. So Saturn provides an opportunity. Well, what happens is this, is that it can create, it brings up your responsibilities. And opposing your identity, it's your responsibility to yourself, and and doing the hard work to kind of create what that identity is again. And it's also getting into a rhythm of work where you're doing the work and you're being consistent, but you're not overdoing the work. You're taking a break when you need to. You're following the rules, so to say, a balance with work. And you're also finding a way to even enjoy yourself while you do it. That's Saturn. When we can make peace with the part of ourselves that has to show up and be responsible, but also not overdo that, and also find a way to, balance it and enjoy it. That's Saturn. So you have Saturn and Pluto coming to a conjunction in Capricorn, which is, the sign of authority, authoritative structures. Saturn's authoritative. So it's kind of, that's coming in January. It's going to be a really big transit. And since it's right opposite your sign, it should be especially significant for you. We'll see stuff in society, but for you personally, there's going to be this square off between Pluto and Saturn, and these energies are very different energies. Pluto's like, fuck everything, we're smashing this bitch down, and we're doing what we need to do. Saturn's like, no, this is the way it should be. This is the legacy. This is the authority. This is the old school way of looking at things. So, basically, there's going to be some tearing down of outdated ideas, or it would be wise to be open to that within yourself. This is all in Capricorn with Saturn. There's a lot of authoritative, old structures. It's like an old house that you're just like, God, this place is dirty. And instead of trying to sit there and repair it, it's best to just tear it down to its foundations and let Pluto be that wrecking ball. Knowing, and you may have to sleep in a hotel while they're rebuilding it, but knowing that house will be rebuilt and you will have that foundation and that beauty again is really important. So, I kind of feel like you guys have been I feel like I'm doing your whole freaking reading without even doing the cards yet, because I'm just really tuning in, you guys. But there's so much going on. So let's dive into your reading. But you're emerging from the sarcophagus. You've journeyed deep into the underworld, and now you're coming back. And there's so many blanks in your life. But I do feel like there's this final cycle here at the end of the decade of just tearing down those last old structures. It's basically, you've already emptied that. You've already gutted the house. You've already knocked the walls down. It's only these kind of foundational pillars that are still standing, and having the courage to just be like, wow, I can't just hold on to these pillars anymore. I got to knock the big ones down. You're right at that point where it's like, okay, we're going to knock the big ones down, and just have faith, just pure faith, to just project into nothingness, and knowing that you're right at that pivot point of an empty foundation, and to be able to envision what you're going to start creating and building there. And this shouldn't be scary. This should be exciting, because you just spent the last so many years around so much death and decay and breaking down of things, that it should feel really exciting. It's that feeling when you're like, I just got a new place. Like, what am I going to put in it? How am I going to decorate? And all that stuff. So, think of yourself as the interior designer. That's the theme of your reading. You're the interior designer who is this person now? What can I create for myself? And not let the pain from that really intense breaking down process you guys have had for the last 6 years or so dictate how you're going to design that place. So what I did recently was, I live in a little house. It's my little house here. And that was hard for me. My kids moved in with their mom, and I had to downsize, and I got rid of like 80% of what I owned. That was about 5 years ago, and now I'm doing it again. I'm taking everything in my little house. I have a little storage unit outside, all that stuff. I took everything, I put it out in the front yard, everything I owned, and it was just stuff, much less than I'd say most people these days. But for me, it was just, even in my little house, was just getting too much. And then when you go through that old stuff, you think, oh, this is valuable, I want this, blah, blah, blah. And, I simply, I guess I did the Marie Kondo thing and just found the things that bring me joy and things I actually use. But I put it in the front yard. It was kind of cool. As I'm redesigning, redecorating, I gave myself time, and it's like things I actually needed, I went out and got. It's like, oh, I need a can opener. Okay, I'll go get the can opener. Wow, I really want a flower over here. Okay, let's go put a flower here. Wow, I really need that light stand, for this light here, and then, so I'm actually seeing what I'm using and what's bringing me joy, and slowly just letting that come to me. But everything else, it's so tempting. It's so tempting to hold on to that old painting. Oh, well, I took time, and that canvas cost me $10, and da da da. And so it's all in my head, but when it actually comes down to reality, it's like that's just something sitting there that's occupying my space, and it's not just a physical space, it's mental space, it's spiritual space. And I don't need that in my life right now. What I need is new opportunities. What I need is to define who this person is now, not let all these old things define me anymore. So, maybe there are some things that are valuable. I can give them away. I can sell them. I can, do things like that. So, I've done a major amount of work, but there's this handful of things that are like, hey, dude, I want to hang out with you. Don't leave me, man. Let's do this. Let's hang out some more. It's not serving you, but keep doing it. And I'm like, very tempting, but I know your game. So, let's not build a house from the wreckage of before, or why did we even do it? Let's not identify and say like, wow, like my career died and now I have to recreate that same career again. Like we have to be open and childlike in our nature again, and be inquisitive and curious about who we really are and how we really feel. I mean, me doing these trail videos, it's like, it's so uncomfortable for me. I'm doing it because I've reached a point where I'm like, this is who I am. I'm a super hypersensitive person. I'm super intuitive, and I'm not doing anything that acknowledges that. I'm out here doing this other business stuff that I feel like I'm faking it all the time, and I love what I do, and there's a place for it, but I'm just not that hard edge businessman. It's not interesting to me. What's interesting to me is finding tools and mental resources and awareness around themes of what's happening in our lives, and in framing things in a manner that can be constructive, and we can kind of move forward and find growth and look at these natural patterns in life. Tarot is the natural story of life. I told you that we were going to get to your tarot reading, and I never got to it, but this is Hangin, right? We're hanging. Anyway, I told you there was a lot going on. So anyway, Cancer, this is the end of the year reading for you, and it's like, dude, this is it. We're at literally the pivot point of all this huge long-term transition. Don't freak out yet. You paid your dues. Now let's start growing, building again, all that. So let's already shuffled here quite a bit, but let's just tune in a little bit here. Cancer. God, I don't know about you, man, but there's nothing like a blank canvas. There's nothing like an empty room. You know, there's nothing like that new opportunity to start building something for yourself. And you know what? Yeah, maybe you lost your identity in that process. You know, maybe the things that made you feel safe are gone. But wow, what an opportunity. You know, it's just a natural part of life. Natural cycles of life. And, you know, learning to see the things that are natural and honoring that is really important. You know, I mean, we're in this temporal world that has seasons and cycles, you know, and if we can't accept that, and if we identify way too much with the body, you know, we're going to be freaked the fuck out. And you don't want to be in that space. You want to be in that space of just like freaking out where your monkey mind, your monkey body, and its biology and its chemical are just like, you know, right? But you've never done that before. Okay. All right, Cancer. Let's take care of Cancer. Man, I got a Cancer ascendant. I'm feeling that shit. All in my house of relationships. Having to be aware of how I conduct myself with other people. Oh, jeez. I just kicked the table. I just lost you. All right. Ooh. All right. So, okay. So we've got our nature of our reading. Okay. Now let's see what's influencing it. You've got the Empress influencing it. This is freaking the harvest and growth and, you know, the material growth in the earth plane. This is like growth and creating richness again. Okay, let's look at your spiritual realms. Let's look at your subconscious realms in the earth and in your mind. Let's look at where you've been. Yeah, a new master. You're mastering the mind. Let's look at your attitude of the situation. King of Swords. Hello. So this is very much about mastering the realms of the mind and not letting them get the best of you. Oh my God, this is great. Your outcomes reverse hermit. It's like you're like, I'm out of here. And getting out of, for a clarifier, we have the reverse high priestess, and it's getting out of that. Oh gosh, it's getting out of the overly intellectual spiritual process. Now, a lot of people can get there and be like super intellectual about their spiritual process. I get there a lot. But if that's not grounded in the earth, if it's not grounded in your well-being, then what are you doing? You know, if you drive yourself nuts finding the truth, what have you accomplished? Except for creating a lot of suffering for yourself and most likely for other people. So, you know, it's finding that balance that's super important. I don't know why my screen just like stops all of a sudden, but I think it's still recording. Let's just assume it is. So, you know, this is just, I don't need to spend way too much time on this reading. I think it's really clear to me is that there's the new abundance is coming. You've paid your dues. And on the spiritual realms coming down to you is you're getting over your divinity is coming down, and it's shedding this light on you that's basically like, I'm over this sense of poverty, the divine poverty or spiritual poverty. And in the past, you have the Page of Swords, and you know, to me that symbolizes somebody who's starting to master the mind. You've kind of been going through this process for a while, and you're starting to wield the sword. You know, the sword is the mind, the mental realms. You're starting to get a grasp on how the mind works, you know, how to function through loss, and how to, you know, keep your mental health in a way that can work and function well when going through big changes. In the subconscious realms, you're coming out of ignorance. in the world, in the subconscious realms. So within yourself, it's all because it's all tied in your subconscious realms, the physical body, all muscle. The muscles store memories, subconscious memories, things unrealized, and you're coming out of ignorance. Basically, is what I'm seeing, both in your life and the material world. The ignorance of the material realms. Your attitude about this is really great because we're moving from kind of learning how to wield the sword, learning how to use the mind to structure yourself, into the King of Swords. And this is, a master of the mind. This is somebody who knows how to discern situations. The sword has two blades. It's about discernment and how you use the tool for good or bad. So your attitude about this situation is that I'm going to master this. I'm going to master my mind, and you're going to be so much more powerful, within this lifetime. These are very significant life changes that are far-reaching, but you're moving into a cycle of being able to discern what to let in and what not to let in, and what to give power to and what not to give power to. In your immediate environment, you're kind of surrounded in this. There's been a lack of opportunity or a lack of options around you while you're going through this process, and that's totally fine. It's natural for things the faucet to shut off in different ways around you. If it means that it's going to allow the opportunity for you to focus more inward or to go through certain processes. And it's not to, the part of that mental mastery is to understand that, is to understand that all of a sudden certain doors will shut so other things can be focused on, and not freaking out and like running around and be like, why are the doors locked? And why isn't this happening for me? You just have to focus your attention where it's appropriate. And that's a lot of listening. But right now it's a very inner thing about your mind and learning to master that. Your greatest hopes and fears, we have the Knight of Wands coming in, and it's basically that these opportunities will come in for you again. So just knowing that that everything has a natural cycle, that this is a time of mental mastery, and that as you go through that, then those doors start opening again, and everything's going to be okay. So that's the promise of Pluto. Dude, it's crazy, man. It's like you can be shattered in a million pieces, have no sense of identity, nothing to grasp onto, your coping's difficult, and then all of a sudden they start reforming in a different shape. And you're like, whoa, what did I just go through? What was that? But again, Pluto moves so slow that can take so long, you can like basically panic in that process. And that's what you don't want to do, is you don't want to panic. You want to learn to work with the mind, see what works, see what doesn't, be discerning about where you focus yourself. That's the main idea here. And at the end, this is really great. You have the Hermit in reverse. That means I've done the work, I've done the process, I've done the inner work, and now it's time to kind of come out. And I clarified that. And with the clarification, it's very much about, an end to the over-intellectualization of this spiritual experience that we're having here. So not letting the mind get the best of you, not tripping so much about polarity and paradox and all those things, because all those things are real, because we live in a reality of negative and positive polarity, but they represent the creative polarities of a single nature. So just keep this in mind. Anytime you get tripped out on paradox, recognize that those paradoxes, they are true because they're the negative and positive, the masculine and feminine, the creative polarities that manifest material reality. So if you come to a paradox, just acknowledge that you're only seeing one extreme or polarity of one nature, and that can throw you off. So I don't know if this is getting too esoteric, but I can just see that potentially you're into these mental realms, or have been, and you're starting to kind of learn to work with it a little bit. All extremes meet. It's like a pendulum swinging. If it starts up here and it swings all the way around to the opposite side, it's going to eventually meet itself again. So that's why we avoid extremes, and we come to understand paradox is that negative and positive are two sides of one thing. When we resolve that, we can resolve that mental struggle within inside of ourselves. So anyway, hopefully this isn't too crazy, too deep for you guys, but I really wanted Cancer to understand that, because it's a painful process if you don't understand what's happening. It can be very difficult to move forward when you don't know what you're working with. And I think that's a big part of my drive and the work that I'd like to really participate in and be helpful with is to provide some of these basic perspectives or set up mental perspectives or ways of looking at things that really provide good outcomes for people. And that's it. So anyway, so as you move into the end of the year here, just know that this is an extended process, but you're coming into this final stage, this intermediate stage. You're like right in the middle at the pivot point. You've already been through the death and destruction. You don't have to worry about that continuing anymore. Now it's about accepting the fact that there's an empty space to create from. And this is where you can really give yourself the opportunity, and it's up to you. Give yourself the opportunity to get excited about this. Look at some interior design, look at different job possibilities, look at different ways that you can frame yourself. Maybe you thought because of when you were younger, when you're younger, it's easy to grasp onto certain ideas of who you are. But as you get older, you start to recognize that maybe you're not these things. It was maybe a friend circle around you that you identified with, or what was socially cool at the time, or what you thought you wanted. And as you got older, you're like, no, actually, who I really am, how I really feel is much more aligned with this, and you might find yourself wanting to be a costume designer when you used to be a lawyer, whatever it is. But that the important thing is that it's not an intellectual process, it's an emotional process of acknowledging who you really are as a person. So you are the interior designer. That's your theme, the interior designer. Keep that in your mind. That's the tool that you're going to carry with you over the next few months to the end of the year, is the interior designer inside of you. Who are you? And getting excited about trying new things. So maybe you had a crazy idea. You always wanted to wear a green scarf, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm really nervous, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to order that green scarf. I'm going to wear it. People might judge me, whatever. Like, just go for it. Wear the green scarf. Whatever you want to do. Do something for yourself that acknowledges who you really are as a person. And if you're not clear about that, then start exploring. And just find the things that feel good to you when you see them. And anyway, so it's a great opportunity for growth. It's really exciting. You've been through the hard work. I wish you the very best. Cancers are super sensitive, super caring, super giving, and it can be really hard to go through these processes, but just know that they're natural cycles. They're always temporal. They're like passing clouds. They come, they go. Your consciousness stays. So sending lots of love to you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I know I'm long-winded, but that's why I call it Hangin' with Cancer. So hopefully you like the hang. If you guys have any questions, if you have anything you want to share, send me a message, leave a comment. It's great to subscribe if you can. I don't like selling myself very much, but it does help me in a lot of ways. So, all right, sending lots of love for the end of the year. Cancer, take it easy. All right, bye.